Overview and Scrutiny panel. Just remind everybody that this meeting is being webcast. If the fire alarm goes off during the course of the meeting, this will not be a test. I would therefore ask that you make your way to the assembly point via the emergency fire exit point. Sam Morris will guide you. Thank you to the members for attending here. We have apologies from Martin Allen and Andrew Cross is substituting, so thank you. We have a full panel of those who are nominated to the panel. However, we still have 3 vacancies on the panel, which I would love to see filled. Thank you to the officers for attending and for the cabinet members. Can I ask for any declarations of interest or party whip? Josh.
Just to say that on agenda item 6, I'll leave the room. It's nothing portfolios for Councillor Wells, but as you've said, you'll consult with National Highways. I'll leave the room. So.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, so we'll move swiftly on to item number 3, public participation. Thank you, Caroline Withington, for coming to the meeting today. I've got your online submission. You'll be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. I will advise you when your 3 minutes have ended. You can then return to the public seating to observe the remainder of the meeting if you wish. A written response will be provided to you by the Strategic Director of Economy and Infrastructure. I'll just remind members, but there is no discussion of this. We may raise the points that you raised later in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Lack of safety is the greatest barrier to walking and cycling. What new measures prioritise pedestrian and cyclist safety, particularly in Malvern? Alarming research by Swansea University and London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine warns that SUVs and pickups are 82% more likely to kill a child and 44% overall. Huge increases in weight of these supersized vehicles impact safety and infrastructure. Acceleration is greater, they have a bull bar effect, and research shows that drivers lack awareness if they care. My background is the automotive industry, and the direction of travel for pedestrians is retrograde. Particles, carcinogens from 18, 19 and 20-inch plus tyres and monster brake calipers, discs and pads pollute. HGVs impact inappropriate residential and shopping areas. Government evidence shows noise pollution is a contributor to mental health and well-being issues. 30 miles per hour is 50% louder than 20, and in residential areas, a box effect amplifies noise further. VAS show that people want slower speed. Wales default 20 has paid for itself. It's not being changed. Scotland has default 20, London and most cities throughout the UK, and Bewdley has areas reduced to a calming 20. Safety is built into new estates, discriminatory to residential roads that have existed for hundreds of years, left to take the impact. Church Street, Malvern, has had a fatality and pedestrian serious injuries. No speed reduction, no weekend closure, given the volume of pedestrians and tourists who spend money. Motor normativity makes us dull to the risks. Illegal, dangerous pavement driving and pavement parking is hazardous to pedestrians. A section of National Cycle Route 46 in Malvern has been disregarded, ideally placed from Thurlston Road down Court Road to Great Malvern Station, a walking, cycling corridor for 3 primary, Chase Secondary, Malvern College students, their international students and visiting schools. Residents in Court Road can walk or cycle to all amenities. Entire families, children, buggies walk from the new estates in St Andrews Road and Thurlston Road. Living streets reduce traffic up to 70% when more people walk and cycle. Everyone benefits.
Thank you. That was very precise, just a few seconds under 3 minutes. I say a written response will be provided to you by the Strategic Director for Economy and Infrastructure. So move on to item number 4 of the meeting. Confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of May. So everyone happy with, let's see, those who were here happy with the minutes of that meeting? Were agreed with that? Okay. Thank you. So move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is the update on active travel. So I will pass over to Tom to take that one on to start. Thank you.
Chairman, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your members. You will understand this is a fairly surreal experience I'm finding myself in this afternoon after 5 years of presiding that side of the room. So, active travel, this is a really good opportunity, I think, to express not only the progress we've made in the last couple of years, but maybe the direction of travel too. The past, Chairman, wasn't necessarily the sort of outcomes we had been looking for in this regard. Can I remind members that in 2022, Active Travel England was established, and one of its first duties was to award Worcestershire a 0 rating, which was obviously very disappointing at the time. I say 0 rating, it goes up to, the grade goes up to 4, so that gives you some perspective. Things had got better by 24 when we were regarded as 1. And similarly in 25, 1 out of 4. These are still really disappointing figures, and I'm sure that everyone in this council, irrespective of their group, would want to see us improve on that in the future. With that in mind, I am asking officers to invite Active Travel England, Active Travel England to come back and have a look, see how we are doing right now in terms of outcomes and also our vision for the future. It doesn't necessarily give us more money, but it certainly gives us a greater status within the world of local government, and I think with that will come opportunities. So I think that's important. I spoke about progress. We have made significant progress in the last year or two. It hasn't all been doom and gloom by any means. And with the exception of Bromsgrove, who have still some issues with Brep to resolve, most of the towns, the urban areas in the county will have seen a local, now I must get this right, LC WIP. Don't tell me, I'm going to tell you, local transport, walking and infrastructure plan. I dream about these things all now. So we've seen some progress, and more progress is being made with those plans this summer, and we'll see that not only adopted, but also, more importantly, delivered. The funding does come through the Active Travel England route, both in terms of capacity and capability. I won't bore you with the revenue issues there and the capital issues there, but just to say, whether it's a small project or a significant one, we have made progress. Hampton Bridge is an example, Keybat's going back a couple of years, and so on. But much of it is more locally based, raising curbs, dropping curbs, Pelican Crossing and that sort of thing can make a huge difference locally. Chairman, more than happy to take any questions from your panel today.
Thank you, Tom, for that. Was I getting any comments from the officers, or am I going to questions? No. Okay, I'll go to questions. I'm going to start with Councillor Louis Stephen. I think he has lots to ask.
Okay, I've got a question. It's in regard of our pedways, footpaths and so on. This might sound a little bit parochial, but certain places like St Peter's and Worcester, I know Warden Villages as well, they are new estates. We call them new estates, but they were built probably in the 80s and 90s. And a lot of the footpaths and pedways were built at the time and built to the standards which were applicable at the time. And of course, they're not now very good, and they don't comply with LTN 120. It does cause us quite a lot of problems where people want to walk and cycle, where the paths are too narrow, and it causes lots of conflicts between people who are walking, They might be walking side by side and a cyclist will whistle past, feeling quite within their rights to do so. It's a pedway, and yet it sort of scares the living daylights out of the people walking along because they're not segregated and they're not wide enough, the paths. And those paths are now coming to being perhaps 40 years old and getting quite old, and some of them are needing to be refurbished. Now, I've been speaking to my transport liaison officer and saying, well, we could do with replacing this or refurbishing that, and he's been pretty helpful about doing that. But the question I put to him is, well, because they're not to LTM 120, wouldn't it be better to start thinking about upgrading them to LTM 120? And my question really is I think at the moment sometimes the council's got two separate ways of thinking things. It's got one which is looking at investing in new active travel, which is great, and then it's got refurbishment on another camp. And it feels to me like they're not necessarily joined together, because my transport liaison officer is saying, yep, fine, we can get that replaced. I'm saying, well, that's great, but actually it's not very good. The path is too narrow. Can we not look ahead and think, well, this potentially could be something which is going to be upgraded in the future, get some money from central government for active travel, do an upgrade to LTN 120, and do the refurbishment at the same time? And the answer I got back was, no, we can't really do it like that because it's two separate things. Thinking, oh, that's so frustrating. So my question is, can we have a bit more joined up thinking about refurbishment and upgrading some of our footpaths and pedways in the future when we're looking at these future LC whips? Thank you.
Chair, I have huge sympathy with the questioner, and he's not going to enjoy the response, because the simple truth is that we're tied by regulation. If we're going to use government grant, we have to build to their spec, which from memory is 3.5 metres wide for a joint use cycleway, walkway. Our road maintenance budget will not stretch to creating new cycleways, bespoke cycleways in that regard. So you're right, Louis, it's falling in between the two. What I will do is take that thought back to officers and have a discussion outside the meeting about what we can do, looking at sort of common sense, if you like, common sense solutions. If we're going to move this agenda forward across the county, we're going to have to think imaginatively about how we utilise the funding we get to the greatest advantage. And I do have some sympathy with what you're saying, because I suspect that's probably where we are.
Can I just supplement it? I mean, we're talking about one particular path which might cost £30,000 to refurbish, but actually might cost £100,000 to get it done to the right standard. And if we get that £100,000 from central government, then it would save us the £30,000 from our own maintenance budgets, potentially. So that's what I'm really asking for. Thank you. Thanks for taking it up.
Kevin, just to put that figure in context, Active Travel England deliver a capital of 738 per year and revenue of 237. So collectively, that's £1 million across the county. That is replicated next year and the year after that as well. But it's not a lot of money, is it?
Thank you, Councillor Stephen, Councillor Wells. I'm going to say my apologies. This is me for getting this right. It's not aimed particularly at that. I'm just going to say we've got a lot to get through. I'm just going to ask if we can keep questions and answers concise. I think, Tom, you did a very good job of keeping that concise. Thank you. Not particularly aimed at you, Louis. I was feeling like we could get to the point a bit quicker, possibly. Sorry, but I think let me go to Councillor Andrew Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your time today, members. And 2 questions, please. Relating to the active travel ratings, so our current rating is 1, and what is our aspiration, what's our goal to achieving? The second question relating to paragraph 4 on page 1, the government guidance, so 55% of all short journeys achieved by walking and cycling by 2035. Just wondering, where's our baseline and where are we at now, and is there information about that? Thank you.
So to help you, officers have an indicative baseline of 30% at the moment. That's created, we get that from surveys from the census at the beginning of each decade, and other sources too, but it is not something that is absolutely nailed on at 30, but that's kind of the rough ballpark we're in at the moment. So I spoke to officers the other day and asked them whether this was actually more challenging or less challenging in terms of the change of the date. So 50% by 230 or 55% by 235, does that represent a greater challenge, or is that actually loosening the shackles a bit? We weren't quite sure what the answer to that, but either way, we've got to make a step change from getting circa 30%, almost doubling in the next decade, within the next 10 years or so. So that's going to need a step change.
Andrew, you're...
Thank you. Good to hear. And our aspiration relating to active travel rating, please. Where are we aiming for?
Well, I'm going to say 4, aren't I? Because if you aim high, you're more likely to get somewhere useful. I think every member of this council, and so many members of the people of Worcestershire, want to see a step change in this area. They want to be able to walk to the shop safely in the evening, and so the public realm needs to be thought through very carefully. It's not just about cycling from one destination to another, it's walking, jogging, all sorts of things. So without boring everyone about the benefits of active travel, we are going to, across this political divide, have to commit ourselves to a step change.
I'm just going to come in there myself, just very briefly on that point. I'll try not to hog this, but I'm just thinking, given where we are, which realistically is maybe a level of 1, what is actually, I mean, we're hearing about sort of budget limitations. What is a realistic ambition rather than what we would really, really like to do?
I'm really quite clear about this. As far as I'm concerned, as a cabinet member, I want 4. I don't want anything less. And that's going to be a challenge, but I think that's why we're inviting what are they called? Active Travel England. There are so many government quangos and so many policies and regulations. I don't know how Carl ever dealt with them all. It's really quite confusing. So we're inviting Active Travel England here. So we're confident, we're getting on the front foot, we're making our case really powerfully. And indeed, that is, I think, the direction of travel in the last year or so, actually. We've moved a long way from 2022, in fairness to officers and members at that time. But this is the point in our journey when we really need to up the ante.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I must say it's very nice to see what's clearly a distinct change in attitude. Linda, I'll come to you in a minute. I'm just going to go to Carl because I think he has something directly on this. Carl.
I do. Thank you, Chair. Yes, Tom, thank you for your comments just then. Just with regards to your statement of actively targeting level 4, given what I know of the progress that's been had since 2022, it's great to hear that the work that was working on and that I continue to work on without bringing up the political divide so often as well. What is the time frame that you're thinking of for level 4? That should be everybody's aspiration, but I don't think you answered the Chair's question. Thank you.
I'll go to you, Tom, in a minute. I just wanted to say thank you to Carl. Clearly, I think Tom in his comment probably expressed the fact that it wasn't him who started this process in the right direction. So I'll say thank you to Carl for that. We'll go to Tom.
Absolutely. So I'll reiterate just one more time. We're inviting Active Travel to come and have a look at where we are right now and use that as a new base mark. It won't. So I can't give you, Carl, in a precise time scale, but the ambition, the vision, the sense of direction is that we need to up our game and aim for 4 as soon as practically deliverable. Now that's depending on funding. That's depending on making difficult choices across the council services about how we invest in active travel and how important it is. It's not just about the health and well-being agenda, although that's really important. I'd like to see some greater reference in the council corporate plan. That hasn't been updated since 2024. So we've had 2 administrations since then, and we're still actually, our corporate plan is with another party altogether, and it hasn't been updated. So I'd like to say that part of this is getting a greater buy-in, and that starts with the corporate plan being refreshed. So I can't give you a finite detail, a date. I'd be foolish to try to do so, Carl. But what I am saying, and I'll say it one more time, we're inviting them in now, this year, to come and give us a new benchmark and see where we are. And from there, we can then plot our progress.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to go to Councillor Linda Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at our papers and looking at Power 6, and I may be missing it, but this performance rating, we don't seem to have a hard copy of that from previous years. Or I'm not seeing it if we have. And we don't seem to improve. We got a performance rating of 1 in 24, and we're still at 1 in 2025, and we don't have any figures for 26. Can it be explained what that is? It seems to be important as to how we're competing, not competing, but how we sit against our neighbours, and it looks as though it's rather low.
So I'm going to ask officers to respond to this,
Thank
and
you.
it might need a written reply to get into the fine detail.
I think that'd be useful. Thank
Linda,
you.
thank you. Rachel. Emily.
In terms of the performance ratings, we are at 1, and Active Travel England publish them on their website. They aren't committed to undertaking the review annually, but what they have said is that where authorities feel that they have made significant strides forward, that we can invite them in to undertake the reassessment. As you'll see from the papers, from the appendix, we're looking to adopt a series of local cycling walking infrastructure plans this summer. And once that has been undertaken, as the Cabinet member has said, we will invite them in to look at our progress with this matter, because one of the key benchmarks that they mark us against is network planning, which is where the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans are absolutely at the core of that.
Thank you. I think our general public would be very interested to know that. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to Councillor Emma Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. I think it follows on quite nicely, actually, is if we have the Cabinet member having an aspiration to reach 4, I hope that he will really encourage officers to take on my request that I'm about to give, and that is in respect of, you won't be surprised, my favourite subject about how we respond to planning applications, which I still actually can't see. We'll come on to this later, but I still can't see our response times in the performance report, which obviously we've mentioned at pretty much every meeting. But it mentions in the report about a series of smaller schemes that have been delivered from Section 106 agreements. But what I would really ask of our officers, when we're responding to planning applications, can we please actually look at what that development needs? Presumably the Section 106 contributions are worked on some sort of calculation, but we just seem to just pick the figures out of that calculation and just plot an amount of money on a development, when what invariably happens is, because that amount of money isn't related to anything, what it actually does is it means that you have X amount that sits there and then is then after a period of time given back to the developer, because it isn't assigned for a meaningful scheme, or it doesn't look at a neighbouring village or whatever it may be that could do something. So could I urge, please, officers, when they're responding to make the Section 106 requests, that we actually look at what is needed, what's already there, so that we can ensure that the Section 106 monies that are agreed with each development are actually used, and they can then make a difference and take us forward with our rating. And most importantly, when we're building new development, can we make sure that then they're able to have active travel?
Sorry, go to Tom, sorry.
That's some really good questions there. Forgive me if I don't capture them all. So I would like to see, and I'll announce this today, I would like to see any major development, and I define that by 10 houses or more, having a design brief that we provide, setting standards for active travel within that new estate, with a presumption of 20 miles an hour. So it's shared space. The car driver has no greater or less opportunity than the cyclist or the walker to utilize that public space. And the implication would be that that would be a 20 mile an hour limit. It would be designed to achieve that end. Now, talking more broadly about how we use 106 money and the role that we play in the planning consultation process, members traditionally haven't become involved in the detail of that planning application highways response. And I think it would be a retrograde step if we started to do that. I think we have professional officers to go back to the districts as planning authorities with an assessment about the highway issues. But where we are looking at 106 contributions to the broader highway network as a consequence of that development, then I think it's entirely reasonable that local members should be involved, and I would ask officers to do so in future.
Thank you, Tom. Now back to Emma.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Wells, for answering that. I was suspecting that it would more be Emily that would be answering that. I hear what you're saying, but that is worlds away from where we are today. So it's fine to have those aspirations for anything over 10 houses to have 20 mile an hour speed limits. I mean, I just can't see for the life of me the parameters that we work within, how that could be achieved. But I was more looking at active travel, the Section 106 money that needs to be allocated for those developments. You've mentioned that we have professional officers. Absolutely we do. But if we look at the standard of responses that we get from those professional officers to planning applications, it does leave a lot to be desired. And in respect of active travel, I'm just suggesting that we can do better, which will then help us with our active travel and fundamentally be able to actually get a scheme, whatever it may be, in place for whatever development it is, so that we're not in that merry-go-round of where we have Section 106 money and then it goes back to the developer and we're no further forward with active travel. But what we do have is 15 houses or whatever in a rural village with no means of active travel. So I'm just suggesting that when we respond to planning applications, we can be more mindful of what is on the ground and what is going to be more effective and what that development would actually need to ensure that it has some level of active travel.
Okay, I've answered that question once, but I'm going to let Emily have a go.
Thank you. So I think it's really just to supplement what Cabinet Member has said. So in terms of the point around speeds on new development, absolutely chimes with the Streetscape Design Guide, which was adopted last year, which sets a hierarchy of streets. And for those, any streets that are lower than primary streets, so the secondary streets, etc., they are designed, and it's the design of the street that's the key matter that keeps speed low. They are designed for 20 mile per hour or less, and that allows for shared use, active travel as part of that. We would expect a developer to provide for active travel on site as part of their design, and indeed we are seeing that coming through. It's worth also mentioning that on significant developments of 120 houses or more, Active Travel England are also consultees, statutory consultees as well. They're not on anything below that threshold. We do take contributions off-site. and for off-site through section 106. And that will be for a whole plethora of things. It can be for enhancements to active travel routes themselves, it can be for crossings, etc. Excuse me. What the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans will give us is that greater level of specificity and the network to which we are looking for those new developments to connect into. So it puts us in a stronger position, not only with Active Travel England, but also to set out to developers, this is the network that your development must connect into. So it absolutely puts us in a stronger position. Just final word on section 106. Sometimes we do take section 106 and it does take us quite a while to spend it. And that is because sometimes we are looking for contributions from multiple different developers before we can have the sufficient funding to go and deliver whatever the piece of infrastructure was.
Thank you, Emily. Does that satisfy you, Emma? You got anything more to say very quickly?
Anything more to say, or very quickly? No, it doesn't satisfy me, because my concern is that we're missing the massive gap that's between, and I absolutely appreciate Councillor Wells's aspiration massively, but I think there's just such a massive disparity between the aspiration, which I wholly welcome, and the reality of here and now. You know, and if we look across the county, the number of developments that are being approved, and not, you know, 120 houses, I'm not talking, you know, Wychavon, Newtown, or that sort of thing. Of course, you know, that's on a massive basis, but I'm talking about your 15 houses here, your 20 houses here. You know, there's so much more that we can do, and there's a gap that's to be bridged. I very much welcome the aspiration, but let's please take the opportunity of the here and now.
Okay, I was going to suggest it's probably nice, but I'll go to Tom if he wants to speak.
Okay, so just to remind everyone that the current design spec that we give to developers on major applications is to design a public realm where there's equal access and parity between all road users. That is already in our policy. And furthermore, if you look in a deep dive into that policy, it says with a presumption of 20 miles an hour, that's what it's being targeted to achieve. Though quite often that isn't actually implemented. Now we might, as an authority, want to go that extra mile, and forgive the pun, and to encourage a traffic regulation order, which is separate to a planning application, to actually support the design that they have created on the ground. And I would be very supportive of that, because I think that where you have new developments, particularly large ones, where there is effectively a new estate, and we're seeing quite a lot of those about to be built or being built in Worcestershire, then that is the opportunity. We heard earlier Louis talking about the width of footways in St. Peter's. Well, this is an opportunity to get it right. So I think that's important. Now, you did say, you did register some concerns about the quality of responses from this council's departments in relation to planning applications. And I haven't forgotten that sentence. It's a really important sentence. If you're dissatisfied with that, or you believe it's worthy of some scrutiny, it's your opportunity on this committee to do that. And actually, as Cabinet member, I welcome you doing that, because I think it's widely understood there's some frustration sometimes from a district council planning function point of view to our highway input. So you may want, Emma, to take that up as a scrutiny exercise.
I would say I was about to suggest we move on, if you want to make it very quick, Emma.
I'm more than happy to cover it in the performance element and update Councillor Wells on where we're at with that, if it's easier for you.
Thank you. I'm just going to very quickly pick up on one word Tom said there, which is parity. I'm just going to make the point that that parity is not having all road users having access to the same thing, that some road users need more than others in order to achieve parity. I'll just make that point, so thank you. I'll go on to Carl, maybe a completely different point maybe. Anyway, I'll go to you, Carl.
Thank you, Chair. Two, although, again, I'm going to come back to something that Tom did say, or Councillor Wells, sorry. Councillor Wells, I share your frustration on the corporate plan. As the only member of the previous administration here, I'm sure the officers have advised you that I did submit one, and we did work towards it last year. The overall plan wasn't, however, updated and shared. So I do share your frustration, but I did share mine. Okay, the first question, this may be towards officers and it's a bit pernickety, so apologies in advance. The final CWIS3 was published on the 12th of June 26 in the publication. It says June 25. Paragraph 4, June 25, whereas the final strategy was published in June 26. Is it simply an error, or was the report prepared against an earlier draft rather than the final strategy?
It is simply an error, and it's an error on my part, so apologies.
Well spotted.
Okay, Carl, next.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, and lastly, there are a number, and I think this may well go back to Councillor Stevens' earlier point, so apologies if that is the case. There's a couple of points inside of the pack. Printed pages 2, paragraphs 10, 11, and then 9, 10, printed pages 5 and 6, where we do have a comprehensive list of the active travel projects and explanations of the small schemes that can remove barriers. However, my question is routine maintenance being presented as active travel investment?
Go for it, Emily.
No, is the short answer there. What we've tried to do here is set out where we are making significant improvements. They might be small-scale improvements, for example, dropped curbs, etc., but really valuable improvements. However, they would not be delivered by routine maintenance. So we have absolutely tried to distinguish the two and show where there has been significant improvement in allowing for pedestrian or cycling accessibility.
Thank you. Any other points anybody wants to make on active travel? I've got a couple myself I'll raise if nobody else has got there. We've got through that quicker than I was expecting to. I've just got a couple of points. Kind of coming back to the point that was being made earlier, but I thought I'd move on from that at the time. When we're saying our ambition is to get a rating of 4, I mean, I'm going to make the comment that we're looking here at sort of like current LC whips that are, or to be adopted. And I'm thinking, I mean, I'll just look very parochial at Malvern, that the current LC whip for Malvern, I wouldn't say gets us anywhere near a 4. So the question is in terms of the iterative approach that we have plans to go through this exercise again and to develop into something which is getting a bit nearer that.
So Chairman, you touched on Malvern, which has its own challenges as a cyclist. Certainly journeys east-west and west-east. South-north isn't too bad running parallel with the hills, but certainly east-west is quite challenging, and I do it often. I would say that Worcester City, to some extent, provides the greatest opportunity to transform the current infrastructure. And I know Worcester City Council have ideas and plans they want to talk to us about, and I think we'll be doing so quite soon. When it says adopted by the summer, it means next month, by the way, if you're wondering what the summer is defined as. It's actually going to be August for those. Without opening up the sorry tale of Brep, particularly since I'm sat next to him, obviously there are outstanding issues relating to Brep that would mean that Bromsgrove is going to be delayed. You've asked me 3 or 4 times today what my ambition would be in terms of the government classification. You wouldn't expect me to say anything less than 4 as an aspiration, would you? But to be honest with you, to some extent, this is all rather artificial. What matters is what happens on the ground. I am desperately keen to see the government recognise Worcestershire as an aspiring authority in terms of active travel. But what's actually more important than that is to make a difference on the ground.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tom. And I'll say for that very much, it was a point I was just going to make. I think it's kind of raised by others a little bit about that. It's great to hear the plans. We need to see something on the ground. That's very much it. Just another little point for me. I think we have a bit of time here. I'll go to Councillor Cross if Andrew, you've got something to add in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just have a question about funding, please. So on our county website, there's a mention of 3.7 million active travel funding from Active Travel England, and just wondering how much of that is relating to the funding of drop curbs and barrier removal, etc., that local members are able to do. But at the moment, it seems that all the funding for that comes from local member-determined funding schemes. I'm just interested to hear how much of this 3.7 million is aimed at the low-hanging fruit that will help make a difference on the ground really quickly.
So the answer is that we have some flexibility here. And if members have drop curbs, etc., that they want to put forward, then please let the Minor Infrastructure Projects team know, my colleague Tina McLaughlin. We do have a long list, but we would be more than happy to add some more to the list because we absolutely know how important they are. So it is a case of we do have some flexibility. Yes, we do need to be delivering the large-scale schemes as well as, but there is also some flexibility on the local littler schemes as well.
Thank you. May I come back? Thank you. Yes, really, that's very encouraging. And when it comes to the more expensive little schemes, such as a new Bellicon crossing or Toucan crossing, where we've been told that there's no highways funding for that, something that that has been long wanted, particularly in Warndon villages, for example. I know of exactly one, but identifying the best site as best location as we speak. Is there an option for that? How can we hope to find some funding for that?
If I could suggest that you hang fire, and I will be discussing with the Cabinet member some of the opportunities that come from the Integrated Local Transport Grant, and he will then be able to make an announcement on that in due course.
I'll go to Tom.
Just a quick one on that, just to remind members that within the budget that was passed in this room in February, there was a dedicated fund for Pelican crossings.
Yeah, I say thank you to Tom and Emily. So it's a very welcome news to hear what you're saying here. I'll go to Councillor Linda Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Jumping around a little, but one of my real concerns at the moment, having spoken to officers and representing a more rural area, is we're talking about active travel, so we're talking about walking, and that at the county currently we seem to have a lack of capacity and officers to deal with footpaths. And ROIP and things are really struggling, and it's quite shocking that we have so few people able to sort of work on our footpaths that will get people off the roads much safer and being able to walk freely without having to have crossings and things, and the paths are just blocked and there isn't the capacity within the department to clear them. So I'd just like to raise that point and see what the Cabinet member, if that's reaching him.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, Lynn. I'm going to say when we talk about active travel, it's very easy to neglect that bit. We kind of talk about it amongst other things, but thank you, Rachel.
I assume the reference is to public rights of way in terms of footpaths rather than normal footways. So in terms of footways, we do have significant maintenance funding to continue to maintain the condition of footways. For public rights of way, resourcing is a challenge. We've got budget for resourcing. We have struggled to recruit to some of the vacant posts. We've tried a couple of times, we've tried via different routes. We are trying again, but we have struggled to recruit to some of those posts.
If I may, I'm aware of a very long-term officer that dealt with the rural area who hasn't been replaced. And I just wonder if, well, the reasons that might be, because you would think it would be a dream job for some people to be out in the countryside, you know, looking at beautiful places and clearing public routes. So I'm just concerned that it's being pushed a little bit to one side because of all these greater schemes. Thank you.
We have actively tried to recruit. We've had approval from the corporate recruitment panel that all of our vacant posts have to go through. That approval was given quite a while ago to a number of different posts at different levels within that team. That was something that the previous cabinet member who sits in this room was very active in pushing through, actually, to get those posts. But we have genuinely struggled to recruit to them. I agree with you. It sounds a dream job for many, but that doesn't necessarily appear to be the case when we look at applicants.
Okay, to Tom, I think he's got something to add.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that this particular summer, with the weather we are experiencing, with these very hot weather, but also very wet at some points as well, I, as a rural councillor myself, recognise the fact that some of our rural footpaths across farmers' land is barely passable right now. So my appeal would be, even if we were fully tooled up and resourced ourselves, I would still appeal to landowners to do what they can to ensure that their footways are passable.
So I'm going to go to Rachel a bit. I'm just going to add, throw a comment here. There's one in Malvern Town which is impassable at the moment, which needs clearing, but we will get that sorted, hopefully.
I have just been helpfully sent a message to say that we've got a new starter this week. So, all helps.
If I may, Chairman, just while we're on the subject.
Keep it very brief, please.
It is, but we still seem to be ignoring an enormous resource, which is our volunteers and our residents. And the fact that we can't get them trained, and by the time we've put them off a few times, they go off and take up another hobby. What a waste of a resource that would cost us nothing.
Can I ask, is there anything, are we addressing that issue?
It's part of the recruitment of the resources within the public rights of way team to coordinate training, upskilling, liaising with, coordinating with volunteers.
Just not happening, Chairman, sadly.
No, because we haven't got the resources within the... That's part of the recruitment package, to recruit the resources.
To then get more people.
It's a bit of a vicious circle, isn't it?
It is.
I'll go to Councillor Emma Kearsey on this.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following up on a point that Rachel just made about the footways, just for clarification, as in pavements. So that you said that we have, I don't think you said plenty of funding, but you know, very much plenty of funding. So what is the reason why we're waiting for the pavements to be cleared for so long? I've got in numerous of my villages, but in one in particular, which I actually pass every time I come here, the actual pavement, you could probably see about an inch of pavement, and there's nothing else. And it's been like that absolutely for years. And the highways liaison officer, when I report it to him, is, yeah, it's on the list, but it's been on the list for over a year. So if we've got plenty of funding for it, why are we still experiencing? And it, you know, those pavements, it's extremely dangerous and obviously prevents people from using them.
So we have two main sources of funding for footways. We have DFT funding that is very much asset driven, and that's focused on improving the condition of footways from an asset management point of view. And then we have the County Council capital funding contribution, again, to improve the condition of footways. And that's very much has stronger involvement and engagement with members to inform that. But it's done on a priority basis. So I will take that point away. If there are some that have been on the list for quite a number of years, I'll speak to the liaison officer and follow that up. So we have got visibility of funding, because we've got visibility of DFT funding for the next 4 years, which is great. That's not something that we had last year. We only had a year's worth of funding. We've now got that visibility So it is about creating that robust programme of works over a number of years, not necessarily all this year.
I'm going to go very quickly to Tom. We're about up on time on this.
Okay, so Emma, are you, just to be clear about what the question is about, is it about the construct of a new new footway surface, or is it about the detritus that currently covers it? There's a very different thing here.
Well, it's probably better if I take it offline with you both, but it's a combination of the two, that they're so badly deteriorated, you can't actually see the condition of the pavement itself. So the first thing is that they've had to be, what's the word called, cut back, cut in, or whatever it is. Oh, that's the one, yes. Sided out to actually see what the condition of it is. But you can tell, obviously, from what I'm saying, and this is in 4 of my villages. One in particular that, like I say, it's just, you wouldn't know that there's a pavement there.
Thank you, Emma. I think I'm going to suggest we take this outside the meetings. Time is moving on. I've got another item to go on to. I would say I had another point, but I'm going to very, very briefly make it. I'm not expecting a response. I will take it offline. Just in relation to active travel and speeds, we sort of talked about this in relation to like new developments. I'm going to say I'm very conscious that one of Mrs. Wivington's point was about the speed and actually sort of getting speed reduction on existing roads in terms of making active travel a better thing. I will take it offline and move on to the next point. Thank you, everybody. Just finally on that, I just want to check, is there anything that we wanted to take forward on that active travel? Please, if there's anything you want to raise now, you want to take forward, or I'm happy to take sort of comments after the meeting, but otherwise we will move on to the next item on the agenda.
Chair, just to say we have made a note of the actions that were already agreed during the discussion, and we'll let the officers, we'll confirm that to officers.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes item number 5, update on active travel. We move on to item number 6, local transport plan for review. I'm hoping for an update on the review of LTP4. It's Tom.
Chairman, thank you. These 2 items, to some extent, are interrelated. So, we constructed our last local transport plan some 10 years or so ago. I think it was 9 years ago. And it's still in place in terms of its diary up until 2030. But the gestation period in creating a new one is not to be underestimated. So we are intending to begin the work for a new LTP5 this year. And I want to be able to announce today that it's my view, in fact my decision, that we will do so working alongside officers, and say we, members of this council. I had a number of representations on this subject in the last fortnight and I've thought about it. So I'm going to create a steering group to work with officers to begin the process of constructing the most radical, visionary, ambitious plan we've ever had. And that work will begin as soon as possible. That's important. That is setting out again a real ambition for doing something even better than what we've achieved previously. And if you're interested in these issues, then come and get involved in the steering group. And you would be welcome, and that's a cross-party invitation. So I mentioned earlier that I think it's important not only that we review our corporate plan, but we make sure that the new corporate plan really does embrace these plans and strategies we're talking about today. We have made a lot of progress in the last couple of years, Chairman. It's not all doom and gloom, far from it. 71 highway schemes, 35 active travel schemes, 6 public realm schemes, and 1 bus service scheme, and that was, I think, in Redditch, to take people to the Redditch Alexander Hospital. There have been rail improvements, both obviously Parkway, but also Kidderminster, and before that Bromsgrove. There's a rail investment strategy, which is 3 years old now, that talks about, not least, further upgrades in the North Cotswold route and also the signalling surrounding Worcester, Foregate Street Station. So lots of progress recently, but this is a time, this is a new chance, a new piece of paper with nothing written on it. Let's be really ambitious, and I encourage anyone here today who wants to get involved in the steering group, just come and have a word with me and you'll be very welcome.
Hey, thank you, Tom. You've kind of stolen one of my things I was going to ask about doing that. Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Louis Stephen first. I think you've got a number of points, Louis. Do you want to just hit us with your first one and I'll come back to you?
Okay, thank you. So obviously one of the reasons for reviewing LTP4 is to think ahead for LTP5. And one of the things I've often been a little bit frustrated about with LTP planning is that it is just a plan. It isn't necessarily a vision for the future. And the plan often has a sort of timescale of sort of just over 10 years sort of period. But often we need to think about things in perhaps a 20 or 30 year vision way. And I know we tend to have that in things like the local plan, for the housing and so on. But we don't really have a vision document. It's a long-term vision to go alongside perhaps a more immediate sort of 10 to 15 year plan. And I think having the vision as well is actually really, really helpful, because it sort of sets a direction and travel for the future, which I think should be done on a cross-party basis, involving everybody, and trying to build a real consensus for the future, rather than short-term, because 10 years in transport planning is actually often really, really short, and I think we do need that vision as well. So one of the things that I'd like to see taken on board perhaps for the future is having that more strategic vision as well. So that's my first question. Thank you.
So the vision is the starting point, isn't it? Let's get the cart and the horse the right way round. Let's have the vision, and from that will stem the objectives, and then the policies, and then the review. And it's constantly reviewed too. We don't just sit there in a chief exec's office gathering dust. It's something that continues to evolve. It doesn't just start and stop on those dates. I really take your point, Louis, about the timescales, because 10 years isn't necessarily enough to build the transformation that I would like to see. And you might say, well, what's this transformation look like? And I'll tell you. Forgive me for focusing on Worcester City, our capital, just for a moment. If you were to go to the top of the cathedral tower and you were to look at the townscape, cityscape below you, the one thing you'd notice, more than anything else, is the rail infrastructure. At the heart of Worcester, you've got Foregate Street Station, the retail commercial centre of Worcester, right there. You've got the infrastructure coming in from the west, Rushwick, Henwick Holt, these are the old stations before Beeching, to the north, Fernal Heath, to the West Parkway and Norton. Once we get the signalling sorted out, why not be looking at rail park and ride coming into the city? Our road network's never going to deliver that. We tried it and it failed. But there's opportunities there. Why not have a park and ride for Morven Link station? Okay, there is land available adjacent to the track bed. This is the sort of vision I'm talking about. Let's think beyond just driving your car into Worcester and paying a car parking fee and doing whatever you had to do. So let's embrace opportunities, but let's start with a clean piece of paper and be really imaginative about actually what we would want to leave as a legacy in 20 years' time.
Thank you, Tom. I'm just going to pick up myself. I couldn't help but notice you mentioned Rushwick as a station now. So given your vision of sort of people coming into Worcester not by car, I'm wondering if I'd be right in thinking that there might be some support for the Rushwick station, which we had got planned, but I had assumed had been shelved.
I can assure you, Chairman, it has not been shelved, and I tested officers on this very question earlier today. I'm going to let Emily give you the answer, but it's much more positive than you could imagine.
No, thank you. No, but this will be very comforting to a lot of my residents, I'm hoping.
So Rushwick Station has not been shelved. It's included in the policy in the now adapted South Worcestershire Development Plan review for Rushwick. What it does, though, is say that the station must be delivered by the end of the plan period, which is 2041. And that is in the policy for the expansion of Rushwick to have it delivered. Barwood, who are the potential developer who own the land where the station would be, are absolutely about safeguarding that land and offering it to the relevant local authority at the time that their planning application is determined. And I should just say they haven't submitted yet, but they're absolutely about passing that land on. And they're looking at some interim options, which may be more around sort of bus park and ride for the short term as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to cut that there because I'm conscious of, as chair, taking things off into my divisional things, but I'm hoping it's kind of a strategic point there. Come back to Louis.
So 2 other questions, if I may. My next question was, during LTP4, one of the elements within there was to do a more detailed work with the city centre transport plan for Worcester, and there was a sort of bit of, I guess it was a hope, and I think it did work to a certain extent. There was a sort of bit of a partnership between the city council and the county council for us to work together on creating this transport plan for the city centre. I think from memory that was submitted from the city council with the consultants that we use, I think, to the county council. I'm guessing it was 2 years ago, might have been 3 years ago, I'm not too sure. But as far as I know, we never ever got a reply back to the district council saying, we like this, we don't like that, we'd like to put this forward, we'll consider putting this into LTP5 and whatever. So that was part of the LTP4 project. And it was genuinely done in a cross-party way with Labour, Conservatives, Greens, working with the City Council and the County Council. And after putting quite a lot of money into it, no response whatsoever from the County Council. So, and I don't know whether this is a political thing or what, I don't know. But what I'm hoping is that officers now will take that report, there was some good work done, and to at least give the courtesy of giving a reply back to the City Council, and hopefully to use that as one of the inputs that, you know, I'm not saying it solved every problem on the City Council, on the city plan, but it would be nice to see that it was actually being acknowledged and used as an input for the LTP5.
Okay, let me go to Tom.
So really pleased to say to Louis that it certainly hasn't been dumped or buried anywhere in the Chief Exec's office, if he has such a thing. And it will become a really part of the informing process to deliver our new plan. While you're talking about Worcester City, and in anticipation possibly of another question, let me say this. I have, Chairman, received representation from various stakeholders about the current regulations prohibiting cycling in the heart of Worcester between 10 and 6:30. I've also received petitions and representations from people who are registered as disabled, who take a different view. And what I'm going to say today to those of you who sit on Worcester City Council is that before considering changing that regulation, I would invite Worcester City to take a view upon what they believe the best solution would be in terms of designation for the centre of Worcester to be a pedestrianised zone. So I'm receiving representations, but I'm minded to listen to what Worcester City Council has to say before progressing it. So if you could let those people who need to know such things, the Worcester City Council, to consider this matter and then inform me of their view.
So,
Third question, is that allowed or not?
Louis, unless it's a follow-up from that, I'm going to go to Carl.
Fine. If there's time afterwards then, yeah.
I'll go to Rachel on this point.
It was just a follow-up on that matter, and I did go back to Lloyd Griffiths of Worcester City Council last week to confirm the position regarding the Worcester City Transport Plan and using that as the basis of some evidence for LTP5. and also that we are currently discussing the TRO with Councillor Wells.
Thank you for that. I have to say, it's, I'm in contact with groups. I'm sure we'll be welcome with that happening. I'm going to go to Councillor Carl Perks. I'm conscious that a lot of us here are sort of kind of quite Worcester centred. I'm hoping we can. There is more of the county beyond Worcester. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There is, believe it or not, it only accounts for 1/6 of the population, and yet it remains that focus. Somewhat frustrating for those of us that live outside of it. Yeah, a few questions. The review of LTP5 was kicked off last August. I'm sure there's a reason why I know this. It was meant to be due for review in January at an initial cost of £100,000, which I can only imagine has been somewhat exceeded now. Part of the remit of that was that we looked specifically at transport hubs across the county, that we focused on BSIT to answer the demands of rural communities and ensure that they'll remain as part of the community, that urban areas also got due attention. They weren't sidelined for rural, which I worry may well be the case for city. We also spoke about park and ride. So my first question, before I get to anything else, is why are we focusing so very much on Worcester City when it is the rural areas that need the transport to maintain their relationships with the wider community?
Thank you, Carl. I'll go to Tom.
As a rural councillor myself, Carl, I have huge sympathy with what you just said. And let's not talk about Worcester City for a few minutes then. So, rural transport has seen a radical improvement as a result of the demand-responsive travel that I now understand is across the county. And it was trialled in my area, so I got quite familiar with it. And we will manage to hone it and craft it on the basis of those early pilots to do something now which is more transformative across Worcestershire, even potentially now involving homeschool transport, which might save us some money as well. So that's one investment we this council, previous administrations of all types, endorsed and saw developed across the county. That's not to say timetable buses aren't important. They are. They are. And that infrastructure, which is largely dependent on two providers, Diamond and First Bus, is a crucial part of how we deliver transportation across Worcestershire. And just to say, we are in a relatively vulnerable position in terms of the marketplace with timetable travel. As I said, we've got two main operators. There's not a great deal of competition in the marketplace. We need to be working with those two operators as partners, even though there's a commercial element to what is being provided. So demand-responsive travel is part of the answer. We must retain and grow our transport systems in Worcestershire, and that involves looking at things like bus shelters, electronic timing so that we know when the next bus is arriving, and all that sort of investment that we need in our infrastructure. Let's not forget that's really important.
Okay, Carl, is there a follow-up on this question?
Yeah, very much so. You mentioned about homeschool transport. Again, that was an initiative that I brought in. So hopefully that trial is still going to be happening in September. As to the marketing on your now assets across the piece, just on the on-demand piece, it was meant to be across district borders in April. That hasn't happened yet as far as I'm aware. So that, I hope, will feature heavily as a part of LTP5. Do you want to come back on that first?
Chairman, I will. And I'm looking behind me to Stuart, who's our passenger transport guru. There's nothing he doesn't know.
We've launched it now across all of the districts, so all the districts covered. There are some cross-district travel as part of the points of interest, but we're looking at how that works in practice, because obviously what we don't want to do is have vehicles taken from, say, the northwest September area all the way to Evesham or Pershore, because it limits the amount of journeys that could be made in certain areas. So it is a piece of work we're looking at, how we link people in across those border journeys. But we are also conscious that, you know, as Councillor Wells has already pointed out, we still have a fixed bus network that has core services that cross the county. And we've enhanced some of those frequencies and worked on those. So it's about how you can make that onward journey. So, you know, things like the X50, which I'll pick on because it serves this very town we're in, goes from Evesham, Pershore into Worcester. So it's how do we link people into that to make those cross-border journeys, how can we make that, and to sustain our commercial partners, you know, in the bus service industry, because, you know, we want to make sure that they are vibrant and journeys are made on those as well as on the buses, as well as the WOD buses. So it's that whole picture that we're looking at now. We're doing a lot of data gathering. As part of the WOD, we are, you know, we can make, you know, we get a lot of feedback on people making journeys. So where are they making journeys to? Where are they not making journeys to? And it picks up those who, for whatever reason, can't make those journeys. So we can look at what people are physically asking to do. So we get not just the boarding data, but we get the alighting data, where they're trying to make journeys to feed how we develop Worcestershire On Demand. So we're doing quite a bit at the moment, and we'll be, you know, looking at those cross-border journeys. Some of them are in place already, but we're doing a lot more on that as we speak.
I'll say thank you for that. I would say it's something I'd come across, and that it's possible to make a Worcestershire On Demand journey from where I live in Morven linked to Martley, say, but not, for example, from Powick, which Tom will know. So, unless it's a follow-up to this, is it genuinely a follow-up to the same question, Carl? In which case, I will carry on. But
Stuart, that was a very political answer. You sat on the wrong side. Yeah, lastly, in the current document, BSIP has been given nothing more than a single paragraph with very little detail. Given what I've already spoken about, in that transport hubs, park and ride and BSIP were to feature prominently to enable all residents of Worcestershire access across the piece in conjunction with commercial, I hope that in future packs we'll see more than one paragraph.
I accept that point. This paper is about LTP4 primarily. So at the point of doing LTP4, of course, BSIP wasn't around. But I take the point, and of course, as part of any future updates and future engagement around LTP5, BSIP is a fundamental element.
okay, thank you. Okay, I'll come to Councillor Linda Robertson finally.
Thank you, Chairman. And I have two questions, if I may, on two different subjects, but they've just been discussed. I'll talk about on demand first. We want to encourage people to use it. And the rural areas, we must remember that some of these people, although there may be a public bus that also uses part of the route, they're not that able to get on and off and miss the timetables. And we're still looking in my rural area for being able to get to the hospital, which seems crazy that people around Pershore and things can't get to the Worcester Royal, and also to get into the city centre itself. But moving on from that, I spent an interesting hour on Friday morning with Emily and with the Regional Development Manager from GWR and our MP talking about Parkway at Worcester, and it would be lovely to have a park and ride if they had somewhere to park, and I felt I just couldn't miss the opportunity to say it, because I think the whole of the south of our area would use it, but it needs better parking, and that's a different conundrum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, officers, my team will help me if I stray. Just can't help saying to you that 25 years ago, when I was in this same post, I was actively involved in the feasibility studies for Parkway. I met all the providers, of which there were 6, I think, at the time. We had lots of meetings. A report was produced, and then there was a change in administration. So I have huge sympathy with Carl, that some of the donkey work, some of the heavy lifting can be done by somebody else, and someone else comes along and picks up the winner's medal. I was going to say something else. What was the else? Oh yes, Linda. I can't pledge to this, and officers will need to reflect on it. But, yes, it is recorded. I'm conscious of this. We cannot replicate services on commercial routes with demand-responsive travel. That is not allowed. However, and I'm thinking about the hospital point you made, well, I don't believe there's a direct service from Pershore to the hospital. You'd have to go into town and come out again. In the Malvern Hills demand-responsive travel arrangements, it has been agreed that the hospital is a destination of choice, a designated destination. And on the basis, you might want to pursue that conversation, Linda, in a separate time to see whether there's any flexibility in doing the same thing.
Thank you, Thomas. I have to admit I wasn't aware of that update. It was something I had asked for the hospital myself anyway, so, from Malvern. So I'm thinking I think when I asked the question, I did sort of suggest it was a wide-scale issue anyway, so thank you. I'm going to go to, unless you've got any particular follow on that particularly, Linda, I'll go to Councillor Andrew Cross.
There's an answer to my question on Park and Ride at Parkway, but it was just mainly to make the point. Thank you.
Actually, I think there is. We're not without hope there, Linda. Rachel may have something she can tell us on this, but clearly it's been a victim of its own success. She's saying possibly not. It's all about land ownership and what we're allowed to do from planning terms and everything else. But I recognise how successful it is. I try to park there like a lot of us. We may have to look at, doing something a little bit different to increase the capacity. When 25 years ago we were looking at this same subject and talking to whatever Highways England were called at the time, and they keep changing their names, don't they? We were looking at competing with the M5 corridor, and the numbers then were going to be quite significant, and that's why the rail industry was so interested. But I think it's gone way beyond any expectation in terms of traffic and cars parking provisions. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm open to ideas about how we can increase capacity there. I'm not closing down that conversation.
I mean, I'm thinking there isn't going to be an answer to that today. The point has been raised and has been taken on by the Cabinet member and the officers. I think that's probably what you're aiming for anyway, Linda. I'll go to Councillor Andrew Cross.
Thank you, Chair. To use a different mode of transport, possibly, I mean, if we talk about rail, and yes, about Worcester City again, sorry about this, but the signalling and points within Worcester City are said to be largely installed in Victorian times. So we've got people coming to see some of the ancient signals that we've got there, and we still have signal boxes with levers. Just wondering, have we got any indications, do we know when we might see proper investment in the rail network within the City of Worcester? I mean, I noticed the impact on Parkway, and that Parkway has been rated as one of the worst stations in the country for punctuality. So, with fewer than 25% of trains arriving on time. So punctuality is really key for getting throughput and people.
Absolutely right, Councillor Cross. I hope Carl doesn't mind me mentioning this, but when I first showed him some images of the signalling in Worcester, he thought I was showing him a picture of the Black Country Museum. This is a matter for Network Rail and the successor organisations. It's not something that County Council can solve. Obviously, it's way beyond our budget, and it is only Network Rail that can intervene here. It is a complicated funding picture for them, but it is absolutely right to say that the technology being used is out of date. It's very aged. The number of staff who actually know how to work that system is minimal because it is so specialist, it is so out of date. The role that the County Council play, and it is not just ourselves, it is also some of our other partners. Other Shire counties who are affected by this include Herefordshire, and then running down the North Cotswold line, Gloucestershire, Warwickshire, etc. So the primary role here is lobbying government and organisations like Midlands Connect as the regional transport body to raise this up the agenda for investment so that we can have a railway service for the 21st century with that increase in reliability.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Emma Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. Something that I was going to raise when we come on to performance, which is response times from our officers. But as Councillor Wells has now introduced us to Stuart as the guru, who I have never met before, could I ask, please, that when we're talking about Worcestershire On Demand, as you know, I'm a massive advocate of Worcestershire On Demand. In my division, it's called Emma's Bus because it's used so much and it's so popular as I've promoted it. And because it's so popular, back in February, I was asked by a resident if an additional stop could be put in place. I straight away emailed on the 12th of February. I had a response back to say that my request is currently being reviewed and they'll get back to me as soon as possible. So could I please send that to the guru of Stuart and have a response, please, and hopefully have the news back that that additional stop has been put in place, please, because I think it's really, really important if we're engaging with residents and we want them to use it. We want Worcestershire On Demand to be used as a regular thing, so we need to respond to people and we need to respond to people in a timely manner. Thank you.
I mean, you might, just picking up that point, I'm sure Stuart will be getting a response to you this week, I'm sure. You might want to review, now we've gone county-wide, you might want to, at some point in your scrutiny programme, want to bring those people responsible to your meeting just to see how it's actually gone down. So we've now gone, we're developing it year on year, we're getting to a point where it's county-wide now, so you might want to take an opportunity to look at that at some point.
I'll say thank you for that suggestion. Unless I've missed something, we're not quite county-wide yet.
In terms of the Worcestershire On Demand, yeah, it now covers some of the urban areas. Obviously, we're not expanded into Worcester City, but it covers the rural areas of the county. We are doing a little mop-up exercise at the moment to cover some of the smaller areas that have been suggested by councillors across the piece where it doesn't quite serve yet, but the majority of the county is now, majority of the rural areas of the county are now covered by Worcestershire On Demand since we launched the final schemes at the start of this year.
And Sharon, it's worth pointing out that we actually go beyond the county boundary in many cases. So, we go into Gloucestershire to Tewkesbury and so on and so forth. Into Herefordshire, Ledbury. There you are. Not just county-wide, but it is pretty much county-wide. If you take out the urban areas where we're basically not allowed to do it for commercial routes, we're pretty much county-wide and beyond, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. I would just mention I saw a Herefordshire, presumably their similar scheme bus on my way here. But I'm sorry, I was picking on the fact that Worcester City isn't covered, which I appreciate the reasons. But we come back to Linda's point about actually there are destinations within Worcester City which people would like to go to, which I think that needs to be considered. Anyway, I'll make my point on that. I think I had another question from Carl.
It's not a question, Chair. It's a open hand, olive branch, whatever the gesture may be. Going back to what Councillor Cross spoke about and the Worcester signalling. Whilst in my tenure, I worked very hard to re-establish the West Midlands Shire Transport Board, which Councillor Wells may or may not be aware of. That was working directly with Midlands Connect, whereby the whole notion was that as a Shire authority, we come together with our neighbours and be able to give a voice as loud as the combined authorities. I'm not sure what has happened with that since March. However, our priority was the signalling, and so I can't really put enough emphasis behind we need that as an authority, not for just ourselves, but as the wider Shire authority. Midlands Connect is incredibly supportive in that vein, but if we want real infrastructure investment, not least signalling to help our Herefordian neighbours, that's the way that we're going to do it, not in isolation.
So, Chair, I've got a meeting set up with Midlands Connect, you'll be pleased to know. I'm also on the board of West Midlands Railways, so I shall make the point in both those places, and I totally agree with Carl. The way to unlock this infrastructure matter is to sort out the signalling. May not be the most, people may not see it as the most important thing, but actually it is. Because until you sort that out, you can't increase the frequency any more than it already exists. And it's still going to have capacity issues and people standing from Worcester to Birmingham. So the unlocking of this infrastructure, which I still say is a great opportunity. The infrastructure is an amazing infrastructure in place. If you start again with a map of Worcester and you went to primary school and said, now you design a rail infrastructure that serves this town, serves the city, they would do something pretty similar to what we've got. It would be very difficult, it would be almost impossible to do now. So, tick, yes please. Carl, thank you.
Sorry, Joe, just to say, and Tom, I am only saying this for clarity, so forgive me. The West Midlands Shires Board is not one of the mandatory positions that comes with your placement. It is one that I recreated that had fallen apart.
Maybe talking at cross purposes. I have a meeting set up with Midlands Connect. Yeah? And I'm also on the board of West Midlands Railways.
I'm going to say, should we cut this, Tom? And it feels like a sort of very, very detailed thing maybe to talk about after the meeting offline rather than something for us to do. I was going to ask, has anything else hasn't been raised? I don't know if all your points were raised there. I just have a very, I think I've made my points. I went through just a very minor one, just talking about sort of while we're doing planning, it crosses over into the other one, and sort of consciously we talk about Parkway Station and just thinking about the planning of the active travel routes in. So obviously when Parkway Station was built, the sort of cycle route in involved a load of steps, and I'm not sure I have a question here rather than sort of a request to sort of let's make sure we do this planning better in future.
So if you look at the interrelationship between the bus companies and their services and Parkway, you'll see there's a lot of synergy there. The Pershore route does come in, double decker, I've seen it many times, coming in to serve Parkway. But you make a good point about cycling, because I cycle there quite a lot. And from the Spetchley roundabout down to the big new roundabout into Parkway, it's quite scary. It's not a very comfortable experience. So we go on the south, and this is really a good example of what you're saying, and I think the whole meeting's about really, in terms of doing a lot more in terms of active travel. So you can go around the Southern Link on the separate cycleway, and then you get to the Whittington roundabout, and then you have to take your life in your hands going the last half mile, and it's tricky. So yeah, lots of things to do. Yes, please. Emily's got something to add.
Yeah, just to add to what Cabinet members said, is that a review of the active travel routes is in train because of Wychavon Town. So from Junction 7 to Parkway Station, that is part of work that's ongoing to look at providing quality active travel routes to link to the station there, and also a review of Woodbury Lane route and how we can take potentially section 106 to do the significant improvements that are required there. So point well made, and we're working through it.
I'm actually going to ask a very direct question here, which sort of, I think it rolls together all sorts of things that have been discussed in terms of our ambition to where we're trying to get to. Will this new active travel route meet LTM 120?
If I could give a very simple answer of yes.
Okay, thank you. I think if we're all done on that, I'm going to wrap up on item 6 on the agenda. We'll move on to item 7, the performance and 2025-26 draft year-end budget monitoring. Hoping to be updated on performance on financial information for services related to the environment. Dave Corbett, are you going to introduce this?
Chair, I'm perfectly happy to move forward if that would be easier for everybody. I'm not sure. Is that onto the front rank? Yeah. Right, thank you, Chair. Almost seamless. The performance report in the packet starts on page 17 of the printed set of papers. And, Chair, it's accompanied, as customary, by a Power BI version on the Our Performance page of the County Council website. And that's got also the updated economy report on there. And there are ones for a couple of the other panels as well. Plus risk information for Audit and Governance Committee is located there too. And the information here goes up to the end of the financial year. All the panels at the moment are reviewing the information as at the end of the 25-6 financial year. And it was really as a result as well of, with your predecessor, Councillor Robinson, of having a discussion. I think it was just before the last meeting that I attended, where feedback from the panel generally, and an awareness that the report had got bigger and bigger over the years to try and prune it, not to lose anything that was in there in terms of what we were covering, that the actual indicators, the tables, the services that were covered, but to actually just say, let's have a little bit less of the historical information in. So we've got, by and large, it's the latest financial year, the 25-6, and the previous 2 years' details are in there. Older years' information can be obtained from the Power BI report, and also we have access to reports both on the website from agenda papers previously, or you come to me and I've got the old information as well. But it's just to try and make this a little bit more manageable. It's still a sizable report. But the information in it, we've still got the little bit on the areas of success and the challenges as well that are in there. A lot of them have, by and large, stay the same, almost standing agenda items. But to try and tie them in with some of the things that we've discussed today so far in the meeting, Rachel's alluded to the part that's in the actual challenges bit around public rights of way and around recruitment there. And we've had it in as an item that the number of outstanding reports, it continues to rise. It's almost an incremental rise in each quarter. But over the course of the financial year 25-6, the total had risen from 6,159 at the end of 24-5 to 6,580. So that increase of 6.8%, it might be sort of a few each month, it builds up and builds up, but as a sort of an indication around the resources. And of course, there's still, as it popped in the note, there's still the need to address issues as they arise, whether they're ones that frequency, the prominence of the route that's being used, and obviously big factors such as safety factors, and then about working then with landowners and undertaking the remedial actions that we can. Some of the annual indicators or the annual data sets in here, they haven't had an update since they were the last report. One that did, it was right at the end of the financial year, was to do with the household waste. A lot of the figures we could possibly quote sometimes local figures, but without having the actual confirmation that comes from DEFRA's data set, their published website, it's always fraught with danger. We want to quote the finalised figure from DEFRA. And a couple of little elements there, both, if you like, on the challenges side, but also on the success, in the sense that the waste disposal, they're showing that the household waste collected came out on the very last day of the financial year, and they were saying that the waste to landfill for Worcestershire, if we take out a couple of the COVID years where obviously the figures were a little bit anomalous, it's the lowest such figure, which is good. The amount going to landfill, 11.1%. So that bettered, as I said, 2017-18, so a pre-COVID figure there. And conversely, there are little elements where we've seen the proportion of Worcestershire's waste that was reused, recycled, and composted in 24-5. That fell slightly back to 43.4% from 43.6%, but it's still one of the highest outturns that we've had over the years. And just to reiterate, Chair, as well, this is one of those indicators where there's a time lag. I'm referring to figures published on the very last day of the 25-6 financial year that actually relate to 24-5 financial year, and that's a national data set. And then just another little element in terms of perhaps moving away from the waste, but pointing out about the traffic regulation orders, and it's really around the number that were outstanding at the end of the financial year, and that's one of the lowest such figures. And it's always interesting then you can start to challenge that by saying, is that because demand has been less, have been less orders have been received? It's not really. I think the number of new requests that were in the last quarter that came in there was 14. And as I said in the note, it's not particularly low, 17 orders in the same 3 months of a couple of the previous years. So it would suggest actually that the measures that have been taken to try and address the TROs that come in and work with partners that might have to contribute comments towards the approval of a TRO, that's working, and the figures continue to drop, which is very good. But the other elements that are in there, of course, around the major ones, which we'd always have really, is challenges and successes around the condition of highways and footways. Almost leave those in as standing element, and the latest figures were made available to the panel for the previous performance report. Without going through all of the various bits, even with it being a pruned report, all the graphs, that is basically the Directorate Leadership Team. That's the report that they're provided with every month. So that shows it at all those little graphs that then follow, go through and provide information on those. Some of them are monthly indicators, some quarterly, some annual. I'm not anticipating fully Councillor Curtis's points around the response times. I've met with Emily a couple of times and Ben just to look through information that we can readily report, prepared to take away any other recommendations. But on page 25, there's a small table there that just shows the basic information in terms of the number of cases and response times. And what I would like to try to do is, even if we wanted extra information in, is to keep that table in, and we could expand it to show the percentage at the end of each quarter for each of the districts. So we'd build up that information and show it in graph form. At the moment, it's just appeared in the last couple of performance reports, that little table there. But really, Chair, the only other elements that just to respond to, the bigger change, it was a couple of bits of feedback from members of the panel around how we show the information, very detailed, again going back to public rights of way. So there are a lot of information there that starts late on in the reports. I think it's beyond all the greenhouse gas emissions. We've got information that starts on, I think it's page, in the printed report, I think it's page 36. There were lots of tables there around public rights of way, and I'm conscious it is important to have it in there, but that it's better perhaps if it's displayed as graphs, and we've still got some tables there. So I've tried to take on board the feedback from the panel there. I'm happy to review that again. And of course to pick up any queries that I can, or defer to colleagues, to officers here on the operational side.
Thank you. And I believe we're also going to get a finance updates on that. Oh, we should go to questions. We'll go to questions on this. On this first. Okay, thank you. Councillor McKersey.
Chairman, thank you. For Councillor Wells' benefit, thank you very much for what you offered earlier, is that exactly as you say, is that if there's an issue that's been experienced, then it very much should have scrutiny. As a result of that, last May, I asked for the number of planning applications that go to highways as a statutory consultee to be reported against the number that are responded, and most importantly, the number that are responded on time. That came to us at one meeting in a not too useful format that didn't particularly tell us anything. At the next meeting, Emily advised us, because I asked why it was missing, Emily advised us that the data hadn't been collected. Emily did actually assure us that there had been no drop in performance standards, which obviously, if the data hadn't been collected, I did question Emily as to how that could be the case. So we then have the report in front of us now, which, exactly as Dave says, you know, having it like this doesn't really help us at all, because we need to have it on a quarterly basis. But the the main thing basically to question is why Wychavon being provided by Jacobs. And most importantly, as you can imagine, the reason why I thought this needed scrutiny over a year ago was because of the difficulties, and I've raised this at every one of these panels, the difficulties that Wychavon have been experiencing with the delays in responses and no responses in a lot of cases from highways to the planning applications. Wychavon, when as it clearly shows, have the most planning applications across the county, also including the likes of Wychavon New Town coming forward. So as much as this report is in a very basic form and not how we want it to be, could you tell me please why are the county continuing to use Jacobs for Wychavon, and why on earth are we now accepting that only 50% of the planning applications that come from Wychavon to highways as a statutory consultee being responded on time? I've gone through this a couple of times about the implications of these responses not coming through and the quality of them. And I've also raised, Emily, with yourself, which I'm still waiting responses for, where there have been inconsistencies on the planning responses. So why is this being allowed to continue?
Okay, so I think there's a number of questions in there. So if I deal with first one is why we use Jacobs. We use Jacobs for the very simple reason that this is a national skills shortage area. We have tried to recruit on multiple occasions, and unfortunately to recruit experienced staff we have been unsuccessful, and we are by no means alone in that. Local highways authorities up and down the country are struggling to recruit, and like ourselves are having to use consultants to supplement the team that they have. We, just to add to that at the moment, we are taking a different approach, and we are taking the approach of growing our own. So we're recruiting inexperienced or apprentice level to build our team up over time. But obviously that means that we get people in, they need to learn on the job, so they're not dealing with the major applications. In terms of Jacob's performance, what we're trying to do is to build up the picture so that we can give you more detailed information. So I have in front of me here some more information from Jacobs looking at their performance, which gives the figures for each month, January to May 2026, and that is showing an improving picture. Now, I think what was happening from having talked to them about what was happening previously was that they were using committee deadlines as their deadline for submitting information far too frequently. But what we're doing now is that it's the statutory 21 days or agreed extensions of time. That is the figure that we are now using, and that is showing an improvement in performance. We are working with them to make sure that that is sustained and looking to keep that going across the piece. Focus on the major applications where we have got responses into nearly all of the major applications. I am not aware of any that are outstanding or over time. However, if there are some that are outstanding or over time, please let me know and I can then chase Jacobs.
Chairman, if I can, I think that Rachel wants to speak. Emily, I'm not quite sure how to communicate my disappointment with this. Clearly this was an issue a year ago, which is why I asked for this to be in a report. It hasn't been in a report that's been in any sort of format that's been able to identify the significant shortfall in performance from Wychavon. So the other thing is that why is it Wychavon that are only using Jacobs? When you see this data...
So I'm going to say, I'm conscious we've got more to do with maybe going over the same ground again here.
I think, Chairman, with all due respect, this is something that's been at scrutiny for the last 12 months, and it most certainly needs to be scrutinised.
However, I think you've already asked the question, unless there's anything new you're asking here.
I'm actually asking a further question because I haven't got the response that I need to understand why.
Okay, can we move on? Can we get there quickly, please?
Well, I do, like I say, with all due respect, Chairman, I think this is extremely important because of all the ramifications that this is actually having. So why have Wychavon been left with Jacobs? And also, to be fair, you've actually told us before that you intend to grow your own, and I appreciate that that takes time. But when you say that you've got the monthly data there, it would be better, obviously, if the panel could see that data and if you were happy to share that with me. But also, I'm even more concerned, if you say that there's been an improvement, then it makes me even more concerned to say if we're sitting at 52%, how bad it really was, which is obviously why we're experiencing those difficulties. I'm just really concerned that this data has been sat on and you've basically just taken this performance from an outside consultant with all the ramifications that it's had on the local planning authority.
I'll go to Emily.
Apologies. I can assure Councillor Kersey that we've been taking this very seriously, and we will continue to do so. And we have been working with Jacobs to improve their performance, and we will continue to do so, and that's why we've got monthly monitoring in place. I am absolutely happy to share this additional data through this panel with yourself.
Councillor Josh Robertson wants to come in.
Just to say, obviously, that the report, the way it's been put, was something that I agreed with when I was in your seat of that slimmed down version, because I know you're passionate about bringing this forward. And my thought when I was in your seat was there was always going to be more data provided. But I think at the last meeting when we got this, you weren't here for it. So that was what I was planning when I was in that one. So.
Yeah, okay, nothing more to say. I don't know if you're feeling your question has been answered yet, but I'm not sure we're going to get any further.
Well, I wouldn't like to say anything else, Chairman, because I don't think you want me to say anything else on this matter.
I don't know if we're going to get any further in this meeting with that, are we?
I think Emily and I are on different spheres as for what we think is acceptable or not. But I would appreciate having the additional data. And obviously, this isn't just coming from me as the portfolio holder for planning at Wychavon. This is the director of planning at Wychavon, and it's been going on for 12 months, and it shouldn't have been. It isn't acceptable, really.
Okay, come back to
just to say, I think this isn't my portfolio, Tom, so you can jump in at any point. I think we'd always want to get the best result, and if we can get the more data to be able to get that best result, I think it'd be good. Thanks.
Okay, Tom.
Say that we're talking about one measure here. We're talking about quantity rather than quality, and whilst getting the data through in the response to planning authorities would be helpful. From my point of view, it's also about the quality. Now, I don't want to open up that whole debate here, Chairman, it would be entirely inappropriate, but I would encourage you to, as a committee or a panel, if you wish to, I'm sure that officers could furnish you with all the data you would need and far more. But I would say it's about quality as well as much as quantity.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I think I'm going to move on at this point.
Chairman, if I could just follow up on Councillor
very quickly.
Point, is that the issue has been around quality as well as quantity, because there's been significant applications that the information that's been provided has been changed within a couple of days. So the issue is with quality and quantity.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. I think Councillor Louis-Stephen has a question.
Yes, thank you very much for the report, and thank you very much, Dave, for the improvements you've made. This very much welcome. I've got some more suggestions, though, for the future. It would be, when you look at these tables, sometimes it's quite hard to know what the target is. So you can see how we are historically, but on each graph, it would be really great, as well as having all the data, is to actually see what the target line is as well, because then we can actually really see, is that in target or not? And then if you had a target line, you could put a RAG rating on there as well. And then when anything was green, we don't need to worry about it. We can just move. And then in that situation, then you could potentially have officers have just a little bit of comments if there's a reason why it's gone into red or amber and so on, so that we just look at the ones where there's something that needs attention rather than streaming through loads and loads of tables and not really necessarily, perhaps as a layman, being able to interpret whether this is good or bad, but having a target line I think is really important for that. So thank you, well done, keep going on that, and please carry on improving those things. More graphs, less tables would be really appreciated. I know you already started. And the other thing I'm going to say to Chris is something we said to Josh before, which was that maybe sometimes things are quite expensive to record all this data. There's an awful lot of administration time goes into these things. So, and councillors are often sort of wanting to add more and add more and add more. I think there's a case sometimes to take away things and reduce and to simplify. So one of the things we discussed with Josh before, and probably never got around to it, was perhaps we could have a little cross-party little group that could actually meet to go through with Dave and say, well, this is that, we're not so interested in that, but we'd like to see more information on this, but we can cut this out, and actually trying to make the report, maybe we could own the report a bit more by helping you to shape what would be in the report and what should be taken out of the report. Because sometimes more is less. You can't see for the wood for the trees, basically. So that's just a suggestion, really.
I can see the cabinet members eager to jump in here to this.
Just to point out, it's half the size it was 3 months ago. So I think Dave's done a really good job on trying to get it down.
Absolutely, and it should, all of these reports, not just one for this panel, they should be constantly reviewed and challenged, because that's the idea of making sure that you are looking at what you identify that fills your postbag, as it were, or email inbox. And actually the information and what you were suggesting, Councillor, about comments and the targets and so on, all of the officers here will be aware that there's the corporate performance risk monitoring system. It's been up and running for about a year now. Now, as part of that, indicators have just been reviewed. E&I, in fact, were the first directorate to complete their review, which was, as always, very good. And it includes looking at indicators, making sure they've got targets, RAG ratings. Now, as part of that, and I take it could be fed more into this straight away, is that there is an authorization process which will be signed off for comments. So the person that has a responsibility for the indicator, it might be somebody like me that enters the data for it, then there will be an owner of that indicator who might challenge the figure, but then adds commentary. That then ultimately, in most instances, will go to Rachel for approval so that it can then appear in reports. We can make sure, because of the consistency, that those reports are seen as well. So we can feed that through into this, because part of that then goes to things like audit and governance. And as part of that, I think the performance report, I think it's for audit and governance, is only by exception. It basically says if something hasn't changed, it's not red, or it's not, or there's been a big improvement, and we want to highlight that. Otherwise, it doesn't get reported if it's just stayed the same. And I think that's exactly the point, Councillor, you've made. I could basically sort of say, we haven't included this on this occasion because there's no change, there's not even been an update, and then you're seeing an even smaller report, but something that's more relevant, got more of the current issues in there that we can go through.
Thank you. So Councillor Andrew Cross, I'll say, can we make this very quick? We need to do the financial bit, which we haven't got onto yet.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be interested to learn what our recovery plan about the public rights-of-way backlog is, and when we could expect to see the backlog reducing rather than increasing. Thank you.
The priority, the first step in that is to recruit to the posts. That's the immediate action plan. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got one starting this week. I believe that still leaves a number of posts vacant. But one of the big areas, as touched on earlier, is around recruitment, coordination and training of volunteers. But without in-house resources, that becomes difficult, and it is that vicious circle that was referred to earlier. So step one is the recruitment of staff to fill existing vacancies.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the financial update from Sarah MacDonald.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody, and apologies to the councillors who sat through this morning. Apologies. So if you turn to page 43 of your packs, the slide deck for financial year 25-26. So it should be noted here that this is a draft outturn position because the accounts are currently undergoing scrutiny by external audit and are awaiting sign-off from external audit, so therefore we have to class them as draft, but we're not expecting any major changes. So as normal, I'll run through and give you the corporate position and then context around the position for this panel. So the draft financial position for 25-26, we had an outturn that we needed to use £15.5 million worth of reserves to support, which was £500,000 above the budgeted figure, alongside £33.6 million worth of exceptional financial support that had been agreed by central government. So therefore, there was a £49.1 million gap at the end of the financial year where funding fell short by that value against spend. Councillors will all be aware that the main issues for the county are adults social care and children's social care, and there were significant overspends there. These were, however, offset by in some form by underspends in other areas, of which this scrutiny panel supported. There was also £12.5 million worth of savings that were delivered in the year. So all the savings that were planned and budgeted to be delivered were delivered, which is the good news. So table 46 gives you that draft financial position, and there you can see that Economy and Infrastructure gave a £5.7 million underspend. Some of that is within property, so that gives a bit of a skew to when we look at the actual E&I slides later, because property sits outside of this panel. And home to school transport, there you can see there's a £7 million savings, but obviously you can there see that the adults and children's services were significantly overspent. Again, it's around volume and value, so all the impacts on local businesses that we were talking about this morning around costs of employing people, costs of utilities, costs of petrol, etc., will all impact on those areas. Slide 47 is just giving the final year impact of the high needs overspend. We've obviously got statutory override, which means we don't have to present this within the accounts, but it does have an impact via Treasury because we're supporting this overspend. So the cumulative deficit at 31st of March was £180.8 million. The High Needs Stability Grant we're hoping to get in autumn. The plan has gone in, so the local SEND reform plan has gone in. If that is successful, then we will get 90% of that funding in a grant into the county council. Obviously, that still leaves the 10% not supported, but is better than the 180 million. Page 48 details the current debt position. So this is a new slide that we've put in so that people can see where the debt is. Obviously, if the debt isn't realised, that becomes a bad debt, which impacts on the bottom line. It is an improving picture, which is good news. Also why it's in there. So debt over 30 days at this snapshot was 28.6 million. Of that, 1.2 million relates to E&I, but the majority of that is within property, so outside of this scrutiny panel. So that would be rents that we charge to people. There is some older debt within network management, but ultimately that gets collected. We don't tend to see bad debt within that area. The forecast reserves on page 49 are showing that the risk reserve is sitting at 22 million at the end of the financial year. So that's the reserve that we've got available for you should there be a shortfall in the budget in 26-27. Obviously that balance is reducing. We were able to put some more money into that reserve this year, but that is a reducing balance year on year as we rely on it to balance the books. Page 50, again, this is a new slide just to give a view of what's happening out in the schools. So unfortunately, the further 8 schools fell into a deficit budget in 25-26. So we now have 38 schools that are now in deficit, and they're being supported by the school's finance team in order to try and resolve that. Page 51 is giving you your total capital spend corporately. So the programme from 26-27 onwards totals £558.5 million. That now includes all the highways grants that have gone through to 29-30. So as we talked about the active travel grant that we know we've got the 3 years visibility, we have that now with the capital highways maintenance grants. Pie chart on page 52 is giving you the future programme breakdown. So as you can see, obviously you've got 308 million within the scrutiny panel, but again the majority of that is all the highways maintenance grants, the roads, the pavements, that type of thing. And then that's just the funding there. Page 53 is just a split of how we are funding that capital receipt, and you can see there's a big grey area that's government grants, and the borrowing is the blue in the top right hand corner. So items specific to this panel then. So page 55 is giving you your outturn. From there you can see that E&I without property is giving you that £4.9 million saving in a year. And just to note there at the bottom, homeschool transport giving us the £7.1 million. So key headlines from that are within waste management. There's a £2.3 million underspend. Now, we talked about this in scrutinies before, in that we were concerned that we might drop, if the waste disposal dropped, we'd drop into a higher tonnage bracket. That didn't actually happen. So we've paid a lower rate per tonne. We've paid a lower EFW supplement, and we've also made additional trade waste income. Road lighting is just under £1 million underspend, but that's the end of the LED rollout. So we're not expecting to see any further savings from road lighting, as that budget has been reduced consistently year on year. The budget for 26-27 should be the current level that we're seeing, so there won't be any savings there. So some smaller savings in passenger transport, and also highways ops, just to note that was an actual overspend in year. So there was a lot additional funding for verge maintenance, gritter maintenance, and we also had a flood legal case. That, however, was offset on staffing savings, mainly on public rights of way, back to that, and also the winter service. We didn't have any additional costs for any additional gritting routes, as the winter wasn't that bad. So homeschool transport, again, this isn't for this panel, but just for completeness, net underspend of 7.1 million. So that was around a lot of work done by the team around looking at routes and re-contracting routes. And also within that, they achieved £2.6 million savings. But there is a note there that a number of children with EHCP has in fact increased by 20%. So that saving is really good when you look at that alongside that. And the expectation is that the number of children requiring transport will also increase going forward. So E&I capital, so overall there's £421.2 million budget at the beginning of the 25-26 year. Going forward, there was a programme spend of 73.8 million, with progress being made on significant capital projects. So Keepax Bridge completed, Powick Bridge, the initial support scheme there has been completed. Obviously work's ongoing on the A38, and again the major capital grant spend on structural carriageways and pavement improvements. So the future capital programme for E&I is £347.4 million, and over 174 million of that is identified for structural carriageways and highways programmes. Quick run through.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. Do we have any questions? I'm going to say we are already over time. Could we make everything very quick and concise, please, if you've got any questions? Nobody's raising their hands. Everybody wants to go home. say thank you for that. I'm not going. I think I possibly did have a question, but I will, given where we are on time, I'm sure everybody wants to go home. I say thank you to the officers for all the very useful reports that we had here. I think there's some notes in terms of what we would like differently information going forward. And thank you to the cabinet members for your attendance here today. And thank you. That is the end of item 7. We're going to move on to item 8, work programme. So thank you. So next meeting, 2nd of October, we're looking at our work programme. We have flood risk management annual report, performance and in-year budget monitoring at that meeting as well. I think we're suggesting that as a full meeting with the flood report. So,
yes, Chair.
So looking forward, I'm looking forward to see where we have things where we want to get in. So we've got the November meeting, we've got renewal of highways maintenance contract, budget scrutiny, performance and in-year budget monitoring. I say, is that also a full meeting? So we're looking potentially to January when we have LTP5 coming in. I think we probably have space there.
We'll have budget as well there.
And we will have budget there, I'm told, as well. But we potentially have. I say the question is there anything pressing that members would like to bring forward into our work programme?
I picked up today that there was a suggestion to add demand responsive transport to the work programme earlier on. I don't know if that finds favour.
I'm not getting much response at all to that. I mean, I would certainly be in favour of putting that. I think it's something that members are quite keen on discussing, I guess, in general, just a responsive transport programme. Should we put that into our programme for January? Or is that going to fit in there?
I was just going to add it to the possible
future
items.
Sure.
We can talk about it at agenda planning.
We got time ahead to look at that. I say, is there anything else there? We do have. I know I've been quite conscious that we've been talking a lot about highways issues, but not necessarily environment. Louis.
that an action note does go to officers of whatever's been captured in the actions today. So that will go as a request for further information or whatever it was. I can confirm that.
I will end the meeting, next meeting, 2nd October at 10 a.m. I'm going to say, I don't know if I want for my own back here. I'm welcome to discussion offline about what we should be doing. So that might be a better way forward than to spend more time now. Thank you, everybody.